This week we're going to look at the mobility of the midfoot. Some of us might have heard about pronation or supination, but kind of been categorized into like, oh, you overpronate or oh, you oversupinate. Let's correct that. The thing with it is that we want our midfoot to be able to do both of those actions and make sure that that action is actually happening through that midfoot. In order to pronate, that means that our midfoot has to spread and open and relax and kind of come towards the ground. Those toes have to lengthen and expand. This helps us with shock absorption and helps us with moving over terrain, and then also gives us a better place to then be able to supinate from, to be able to find that arch, keep that good arch lift to then propel ourselves forward. We start in that gait cycle with a supinated foot, so with that heel strike, and being able to have that rigid foundation to control the movement and then pronate into, to then, like I said, lift back out of and press up with it. The thing with it is we want to make sure that your foot can maintain that contact between your heel, the base of your pinky toe, and the base of your big toe throughout this movement that we're going to do, so that it makes sure that the movement's actually happening from our midfoot and we're getting this eccentric lengthening through the backside of our heel versus just making that movement happen by teetering over and compensating from somewhere else. So what you're going to do for this exercise is you're going to take some socks, and we'll add them in just a moment. But first, you're going to have one foot forward and one foot back. So we're going to start with our right foot forward. And you're going to have equal weight between your heel, the base of your big toe, base of your pinky toe throughout this movement. Knowing that this movement's about connecting and feeling, so going really slowly and kind of noting what wants to happen and how you might have to adjust that for it. And ideally, we're going to add in some socks to help make it a little bit easier with it. So you're going to keep this heel heavy, and throughout this movement, we're thinking about your rib cage being stacked over your hips. We're going to point our hips towards the right. So first we're thinking about shifting our weight forward, getting over the pinky toe side of your foot, keeping that heel heavy, base of big toe down. Then you're going to rotate around, thinking about those toes spreading, that arch reaching towards the ground as you rotate towards the left to have your knee go down to the inside of your big toe without losing your pinky toe, without losing your heel. And then you're going to rotate back around and out. So we're looking to kind of make this lazy 7 in a sense through those 3 points of contact throughout the movement with it. When we're doing it, we're making sure that as you shift forward, you're not falling into an anterior pelvic tilt, you're not leaning back. So we're keeping that stack, keeping that heel heavy, thinking about reaching through the underneath side of that hip and knee to get you there, going slowly so you can get there as best you can. And then slowly rotating around, feeling that spread and reach through that midfoot. And then we're gonna come back and then reverse it. A lot of time what ends up happening is people might try to do the movement and they're just moving their knee rather than thinking about keeping their rib cage and pelvis organized over their base of support and shifting everything together as a movement. And that knee movement is a result of where your pelvis is positioned. So as you're going to do this, if this feels challenging to keep those points of contact down, this is where we can help your body out and use some socks or wedges to lift the ground up and kind of make it a little bit easier to get to those places. Typically, if your heel tends to be kind of tipped up on the inside and you're more kind of find that you roll to the outside of that foot, you have a arch that stays pretty locked and lifted with it, you're going to start off with a wedge underneath the outside of your heel to tip you down and make it easier for you to get toward that big toe. On the flip side, if you tend to have more of a collapsed arch or even a bunion or the big toe that kind of goes in, then you're going to put a wedge underneath the inside of your heel to help lift your foot up and have, or your heel up and have a better foundation to start from. So what that's going to look like is you just take a sock and roll it a little bit. And you don't want it so much where then you fall over, but just to give you a better sense of the ground. And so you would put it underneath that outside of that heel, keeping that heel heavy. Again, hips stay square to come forward. I'm aiming for my knee to point over my pinky toe, and then I'm going to rotate around. Make sure those toes don't scrunch. You can think about as if there was a pencil in front of your toes that you're trying to nudge forward. Feel that arch relax. Make sure your heel doesn't spin out. So you can pretend like I'm going to be there and going to steal a $100 bill out from underneath one of those 3 points of contacts to come here, and then you're going to reverse it back. When you're using those wedges, it should feel easier to do it. So I give you kind of a guessing place to start from, but then it's all about reflecting on yourself and how that feels. Sometimes you might need a little more than that. Sometimes you might need something underneath the base of your pinky toe and or something underneath the base of your heel, the base of your big toe as well. That can typically be the case if that arch is really locked and if you have a history of Morton's neuroma or metatarsalgia, we have irritation in that midfoot area with it, and we need to help that area be able to spread and display that load through that foot. If you find that as you're going to do that, that heel swivels, really pause, think about keeping that heel heavy and really visualize that midfoot expanding rather than just getting this spin happening there with it. So explore that, try that out, see how that feels. Afterwards, it should feel like, oh, my foot's a little bit more mobile, I'm able to be a little bit more grounded. Sometimes it could even make it easier to go into other movements and feel freer in our hips. We're going to take the ideas of those wedges and go into also a supinated in that other position, and then we'll continue to take it into the kinetic chain to see where it can go from there. But just like any joint, we want to be able to have full range of motion in both directions so that we have a better resting point and then we have a place to expand from and a place to contract from. It doesn't necessarily matter what your arch looks like, whether you have a high arch or a low arch, but it's more about, is your body able to go in both directions equally? So give that a shot, see how it feels, and then we'll keep exploring and diving into more foot stuff moving forward.